is a social media influencer and podcast enthusiast. Apart from those, he's a highly qualified and driven MBA graduate who studied at Tsinghua University, MIT, and Columbia University. Nowadays, he's working at Unilever as part of the Unilever Future Leaders Program. What's more, he's also a co-founder of a fintech company called MyWallchart. Today, he shares his motivations of founding MyWallchart and his personal experiences as a key influencer on Chinese social media platforms, as well as living in China. Hello, Marco. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much. Yes, I'm very excited to be here.
I'm excited too. So I want to know that you have almost 500,000 followers on Douyin, which is a major Chinese social media platform. How did you started it? And why did you have so many followers? What's the secret?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure if I actually cracked the secret myself so far. Basically, when I went to China to study at Tsinghua in Beijing, I was very curious about the social media landscape in China. And I quickly learned from my Chinese friends that it is extremely different from what I was used to in Europe. So I started experimenting. I downloaded Douyin, which is the original Chinese version of TikTok. I downloaded Xiaohongshu, Kuaishou, so pretty much all the social media apps that were hot back 1.5 years ago. And then I started posting travel content. And for some reason on Douyin, it just exploded over time. It grew. And then, I mean, it's been a crazy journey so far. And I only then realized how big China is when you look at your phone screen and you see that you got virtually 1,000 followers every minute. So it's crazy.
And is it because of your travel content, or did you speak Chinese in your videos?
I guess it's a mix of both. So I use, I've been traveling all my life to many different places. I've used a drone for many of my travels. So I think the combination of good travel content in combination with me speaking some Chinese and being able to write a caption in Chinese and to communicate with some of the followers in Chinese was definitely a big advantage because as you probably know yourself, there's not too many white people in China who actually take the pain of learning Chinese. So it's still a bit of a USP when you're in China.
But nowadays there are more and more foreigners who can speak Chinese.
Luckily, I've been surprised. I think many now take it up. On the other hand, you still find so many people who've been living in China for 10 or 15 years and virtually speak nothing.
Same happened anywhere.
Yeah.
And how long have you lived in China?
Just about 1.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
I mean, it was supposed to be 2 years, but then COVID-19 struck and I left China about 6 months earlier than expected.
I see. And how did you manage to learn Chinese to an advanced level? And to many people, they think it's one of the most difficult languages, and you were there for 1.5 years?
Yeah, I mean, advanced level, it might be a bit of a stretch. I now completed HSK 4, which is intermediate level, let's put it this way.
Okay.
I think the key is really to be disciplined. I dedicated or have been dedicating 1 hour a day on self-study, where I just literally practice characters and listening and writing. And then I have had up until now a Chinese teacher based in Chengdu in southern China, and we still have our weekly Chinese class lessons. And so that's been helping a lot.
And did you start learning when you arrived to China or even before?
No, I literally started learning when I arrived because I think I was also a bit naive. I came to China expecting that, some basic English will be understood everywhere. And then I realized that even in some Chinese restaurants in Beijing, the Fuyan, so the waiter or waitress would actually not even understand water or beer. And so I quickly learned that speaking some Mandarin is pretty much a survival skill in China, unless you maybe live in Shanghai in an international area or Shenzhen. But even in Beijing, it's still a big advantage if you speak basic Mandarin.
And why did you decide to learn more besides the basics?
Obviously, it's a fascinating language because it's so radically different than any other language I've ever studied, with a character system and not an alphabet system. And also, I think, speaking Chinese for my career goals and my interests is just a vital component of what I want to achieve. And it's been helping me communicating with my followers. It's been helping me understand Chinese culture better, to communicate with people and to learn about their point of view. And so to me, it is a fun activity and also a very useful one.
Did you find that your social media experiences and the language skills help you understand the culture, the people better there?
I think so. I mean, speaking the local language, I guess, is always a door opener to a country's culture. And I think it's especially the case in a country that is so culturally different from what I was used to, and that is linguistically so different to what I was used to. And so, without speaking Chinese, it's hard to really talk to people and to understand their point of view. I remember many times I used to take taxis from Wudao, where the university is located, to Sanlitun, which is the area where people go out. And I would never understand what the taxi drivers were talking to me. They were always super excited to have a Swiss guy driving around, and they wanted to speak to me. And we just failed at having a discussion because I was lost. And then over time, once my Chinese got better, I could hold some basic discussions with them. And it was interesting to learn, just basic stuff, how proud they are of China's economic achievements, how curious they are to learn about Europe and about Switzerland and about how I like China and what I like and what I dislike. And so, without the language skills, all these discussions would have been impossible.
Yeah, indeed. And also during the COVID time, I was reading news in English, sometimes in German, and then I also use Baidu to read the same news in Chinese. And then it's the same thing, but from different language, and they wrote it in different way. And
Yeah, interpretation is usually very different on the Chinese side and the Western side. That's
yeah,
true.
it's funny when you understand multiple language, then you see the same story, but it's written different way, and then the audience will have a different impression.
Yep, we're not
Yeah.
doing a good job of bridging these misunderstandings and misconceptions, and I think there's a big chunk of work for us to be done.
Yeah, talking about misconceptions, what do you think are the typical misconceptions from the Western side?
I think one huge misconception that I hear very often is that China in the West is kind of perceived to be a threat. There's this China threat theory, of a rising China that is eating away of the West's influence in the world. And I noticed that when I speak to Chinese, that their interpretation is actually very, very different. And if you look at history, it also makes sense why the Chinese perception is so different than ours. Because if you look at history just 500 years ago, China was already by far the largest economy in the world. Even up until 1850s, China was the largest economy in the world. And it was literally only after a century that the Chinese often call a century of humiliation, influenced by foreign powers, mainly Britain, Russia, and Japan, that China lost its mojo, so to say, and just got radically smaller than it used to. And so, from the Chinese perspective, China's development is more seen as restoration of former glory and going back to the normal. Whereas sometimes think in the West, we just always talk about China now popping up somewhere on the global stage and being a major power, which is actually very strange when you look at economic history. And I think another misconception is I think many Westerners just underestimate the sheer speed of development that's been happening in China over the past couple of years. It's hard for people to grasp just how different China is. We were used just one area, payment systems. Chinese have literally skipped the generation of credit card users. They went straight from cash to mobile payments. Cash is now basically dead in China. And it's just hard for Westerners, I think, to understand without having been to China how advanced the country is in many aspects already. as I said, mobile payment being one, but then also infrastructure. You arrive in China and it's just a gorgeous built airport. Infrastructure is really good, high-speed trains. And so, yeah, I think many Westerners underestimate how quickly China developed.
And also, I think given the technologies and also 21st century, so many new opportunities that a country can literally take advantage of the newest technology. As you mentioned, like a bullet train, as you mentioned, like a digital payment. You don't have to go through the traditional step, like I use cash and then have a card and a credit card and then digital payment. Literally, they can just jump the steps. Yeah.
Exactly. I really think they sometimes just took best practices of other countries and they just skipped some development stages and went straight to the
Oh,
most up-to-date version of it. And I think to great success. Yeah.
yeah, that's just also typical story from Singapore, right? So Singapore back then, Lee Kuan Yew literally visited so many different countries and then brought the best practice to Singapore. That's how Singapore developed so fast.
Very smart, but I think increasingly it's going to be us looking at China and see what are the best practices, and then we got to copy them because I really do think in some areas China is now far ahead of many other Western countries, and we will increasingly be looking at them more as a trendsetter than just as a copy machine.
I also think it's also deep rooted in the working culture because everything moves so fast. But in the Western part, people put more emphasis on quality of life, like a personal time.
Yeah, I mean, regardless whether you think this is a good thing or a bad thing, I do think that the Chinese work ethic is extremely impressive and also shocking to some degree. I mean, 996 schedule, the crazy 9 to 9, 6 days a week schedule that many Chinese tech companies incorporate. And I mean, it comes with disadvantages too, to
Yeah,
be fair. I
yeah.
mean, many people complain about mental health issues and just enormous amounts of stress, but it is, I think, true that Chinese have an exceptional work ethic, and that has helped them, among many other things, to develop
Yeah.
very, very fast.
Mm-hmm. And since you came back to Switzerland, how did you get the idea of starting your own business, which I want to talk about now?
Yeah, MyWallchart. So the story is probably a bit long. So I would like to set you the stage of what has led me over many years to then come up with two friends to found MyWallchart. Basically, I've been interested in investing and money management since a very young age. I started a bank apprenticeship at age 16. So you can already see that back then investing topics were a key interest of mine. I then became a client advisor. I worked in investment advisory in Swiss banking for a couple of years. And I noticed something quite peculiar or worrying, and that is that many things that I learned in my job have never been taught at school. You have all kinds of classes in your primary education, secondary education, but we've never learned how to make a budget, how to invest savings, how to choose the right payment services after we graduate from school. And so I do think that in Switzerland, and probably not just only in Switzerland, but in many other countries, there's a big lack of financial education. And that leads to all kinds of issues with many Swiss people now being very risk averse and never investing in bonds or stocks. If you look at the data, there's about just 20% of young professionals in Switzerland that actually invest in stocks and bonds, and roughly more than 80% just keep their savings in cash accounts, which I think is highly problematic as it just leads to more inequality and also an erosion of purchasing power with inflation. And so there's always been that urge to help people get on their feet in terms of finances, to help them invest money wisely for the long term. And then when I came back from China, my very close friend Eve, who I've known for more than 10 years and who's really one of the closest friends in my life, approached me because he just recently got so fascinated by the FIRE movement and financial independence. And he told me about the books that he's read. He told me how he's tracking every expense, every income, every asset that he has. And he showed me the Excel sheet that he built where he actually keeps track of all his finances. And we started discussing more and more about these topics, about FIRE, about investing, and then thought, actually, there's a big need for these topics to be combined. And so we luckily found an amazing software developer, a mutual friend, Gabriel, who's been helping us. And the three of us now set up MyWallchart, which is basically two things. One, it's a platform for financial education. So we're posting blogs, write them ourselves or link to third-party blogs that we think have come up with really smart advice to help people invest their money, to help people understand basic financial concepts. And then second of all, MyWallchart is also a web tool that actually replaces your Excel spreadsheet, where you can use the web tool to track every expense that you have, every income stream that you have, every asset that you have, and to help you visualize how your assets are developing over time, how you can reach financial independence, and how you can cut down on expenses that are unnecessary and don't really help you move forward in your life.
Yeah, it's very interesting because in my second episode, my guest is Matthias Richter. You listened to the episode?
I listened to that one and I reached out to Matthias, and he's a fascinating guy. Like I could literally sense that he is probably one of the most passionate believers in FIRE that I've ever met. And in your podcast, I think he shared some really, really interesting examples on how he adopts FIRE in his daily life. And yeah, he's a great guy to talk to. I was very happy that you featured him in your podcast.
Yeah, he has been using the spreadsheet for so many years, and now with the technology, people build apps, and it could be much easier than tracking your own spreadsheet. Yeah.
We actually reached out to Matthias, and he promised to actually give us feedback on MyWallchart, and so we will incorporate his feedback into the future development. And yeah, it's been great to connect with him, and I'm very glad that you had him on the show, and so it was a great contact for us.
Yeah, glad to hear that. And also, this is exactly one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast and helping the audience learn more about personal finance through the conversations. And now back to your company. Where is it now? Are you developing it? Is it in the beta stage?
No, we launched it. It has all the features that we initially wanted for the launch. We're currently or constantly working with Gabriel on new releases. But basically, you can find MyWallchart at mywallchart.com. The blog is up. You can find book recommendations about investing and FIRE, and you can also reach the web tool. It works very well. All you need is your email address, and you can choose a password, and then you're ready to go. You can start typing in your expenses, your income streams, and your assets. We built it around privacy, so we will never ask you to link any bank accounts or credit cards to it. First of all, because we also don't want this. I think it makes sense to have complete freedom on how you name your assets, whether or not you want to disclose where these assets are held, and really to have privacy at the core, so that it's just a replacement of your spreadsheet that you might keep somewhere and that does not such a good job of visualizing your progress over time. So you'll save a lot of time just by the end of the month going on mywallchart.com, typing in all the parameters of your financial situation, and the tool will automatically visualize your progress over the past couple of months and help you achieve financial independence faster.
Only when you see it, then you know where you can improve. Otherwise, everything is very in the cloud, I would say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I really think it helps to have, I told you with Chinese that I'm a strong believer in discipline, and to have a routine that at the end of the month, you have all your expenses for that month, all your income streams ready. You have like this routine of going to a tool like MyWallchart to type it in, to see how have you done this month. Are there any things that you could improve, cut down on? And then literally see how your investments are hopefully increasing month by month can be a huge motivation booster, and just keep this topic, this important topic of financial literacy, top of your mind.
So people can learn about personal finance from MyWallchart and also can track their assets Yeah.
Correct. It's basically two things. So when you just go on mywallchart.com, you'll just see the blog, you'll see the book recommendations, and then there's a link to your personal dashboard and finance tool, and then you can register for it. Everything is for free, no charges. And so we're very happy for people to try it out and give us feedback on how they
Mm-hmm.
like it and what we could improve further. Because
Mm-hmm.
as I told you, we are very lucky to have in-house our software developer who can constantly help us improve it. And so we're very happy to receive feedback from users.
And where do you see my war chart going next?
We have a lot of ideas. I can tell you this. I mean, currently we're working on the mobile version to have it more mobile friendly. Obviously, many people these days use their smartphones all the time. So we started off with the desktop version, and I really want to optimize it. And then there's lots of new features and much more visualization tools that we want to incorporate with Gabriel together, basically based on user feedback. We also want to share more of our own posts. We've been posting about once a week, which we're not very happy with. We want to increase that frequency a lot and to really become the number one-stop platform for people who have questions about investing, who want to learn how other investors are doing it, and who want to also learn about our investment philosophy, because I think it's quite different to what you've been told by maybe some bank advisors or other people
Mm-hmm.
in the area.
And what is your investment philosophy then?
It is actually quite boring because it's mostly about choosing low cost, passive instruments like ETFs, largely on stocks, on a broadly, globally diversified portfolio of stock ETFs. So if you want to pull it down in key parameters, it's ultra long term. So be in for the long run. Don't sell. Just literally invest regularly your savings into the portfolio. Then second, have that portfolio in low cost passive instruments like ETFs. And then three, have that portfolio as globally diversified as you can, and not just having everything in the Swiss stock market, to really have good exposure to Asia, North America, emerging markets, and Europe, obviously.
Mm-hmm. And can people buy ETFs directly from your platform?
No, we're not a broker, and we also don't want to be. We want to be an independent platform that literally just shares what we believe in and help people overcome like all these human flaws of becoming nervous when the market gets rough, and to sell too early, or to buy into cluster risks that are dangerous for their long-term health,
Mm-hmm.
financial health. And so basically it should be a platform where we're not giving financial advice, but literally rather share how we personally do our investments,
Mm-hmm.
what our investment philosophy is, and share the few blogs that we see that actually share the same philosophy.
So it's more focusing on the education side and also
Correct.
a tool to help them to track their investment and personal assets. Yeah.
Correct. That's true.
Okay. And then, so right now, all the audience can already find it on mywallchart.com and to
Yep.
test it. Yeah.
Yep, you can start the register, give us feedback. You can also provide feedback to our GMX customer account. So just write to MyWallchart at gmx.ch, and we're very happy to receive feedback, or reach out to us on Facebook, where we're also at. As I said, we're really trying to learn as much as we can from the FIRE community, to get their feedback, to learn what they need, how we could improve the tool. So we want to be very customer centric on this and gather as much feedback as
Mm-hmm.
possible.
Yeah. I think the fire community is quite big globally, and then the concept is not so complicated. But what's good is to have the tools like this to actually make life easier. So instead of using spreadsheets, now you have the tools to help people to track and understand and learn. And like you said, long-term investment. So if any of the audience here is like early 20s to 30s, you better start now.
I totally agree. I mean, I wish I had already started at age 10 and my parents would
You
have forced
wish
me.
I wish I would have started when I started working like 10 years ago.
I don't think you can't start too early on this. I strongly believe in this. And to be honest, you really need this constant input of a strict investment philosophy, because it's just way too easy to become nervous when the markets get rough and to sell, or to actually be irrational and do stock picking, that you should know that the academic research on individual stock picking is pretty depressing, and it's really hard to beat the market if you're an average investor, especially after fees. It's one of the most difficult things to achieve, and actually very, very few in mutual funds have achieved it. So we just strongly believe that it's best to go passive, to buy the whole market, broadly diversify, be in for the long game, invest regularly, just have maybe 6 months of expenses in a cash account, and the rest you should be investing, be in for the long game, and that's how we believe you can achieve financial prosperity in the long run.
And the most importantly is start now.
And start now. Stop procrastinating. We all know how easy it is to procrastinate, and once you figure it out that it's actually quite boring and you don't need to do much, you need to set it up once you have your portfolio. Don't feel pressured that you need to be a stock trader, that you constantly need to monitor your investments. We really believe in that boring philosophy, so to say, to be ultra long term, buy and hold. And then you don't really have much work to do. All you need to do is to decide how much money each month you want to put in your portfolio. You just ignore it, you let it grow, and you're going to see that it will most likely grow significantly over 20, 30 years.
Yeah,
and I think
20,
this
30
is,
years
this
if they
is,
start now.
yeah.
Yeah, otherwise it's just 10, 15 years. Yeah.
And the very interesting study that we've came across a couple of years ago showed that the more you look at your investments, the poorer your investment returns. So I really think this is a very powerful indication that human behavior and human psychology is prone to error and to overreaction. And so being boring in investing is actually a very, very good thing. And it
Exactly.
doesn't need much of your time.
Yeah, but first of all, I think all the audience need to check out your content on the website to really understand it. Because if people don't understand it, just follow the advice when the market start to drop on the big volatility, and then they will do irrational things. But you really have to understand it and believe it, and then whatever the market happens, you just like be zen.
Yeah, exactly. Just stay calm. And we had a blog post written about why investors should stop timing the market, because what we hear many times is people keep procrastinating their investments because they think it's not a good time. Well, guess what? Nobody has a crystal ball to know what's going to happen over the next couple of years. And if people claim to do so, I will be very, very suspicious. And so there might be never a good time to invest. You can wait for decades and still find excuses why you should not be investing now. So we really think timing the market is something that is nearly impossible to achieve. And so once you have enough income that you can put a certain fraction of it into savings, you should start investing and be in for the long run. Obviously, this is not financial advice. You should obviously check what your financial needs will be, how much cash you need to have in reserves, if there's any big expenses that you expect over the next couple of months or years to happen. So obviously you have to look at the individual situation, but as a general rule of thumb, it makes sense to maybe have 6 months of expenses in a cash account, and the rest of your savings should be somehow broadly diversified, invested in stock ETFs, in our view.
Yeah, especially for the 2030s people.
Exactly. And it's interesting that people, it's been a lot of talk about inequality, income inequality, financial wealth inequality. And it's really interesting to see that one big driver of this is actually the middle class being disproportionately underinvested in stocks, and that the top 1%, the richest in our world, are actually heavily invested in private equity, in stocks, in bonds, in real estate. And so when you have periods, years and decades of stock market booms, it just further increases inequality, because the rich take all the gains from the stock market, whereas many middle class households have all their savings in cash accounts, get very, very little interest on it, and in the worst case, even have it eaten up by slowly but steady inflation. And so it is, I think, really important to help educate, especially now young people who have such a long-term investment horizon, that it's really time to start.
Yeah. I think the most powerful is to show the compound, the graph, like from the year 10 till year 15, and from the year 15 to year 20. It's a huge difference. It's really the last 5 years, the compound.
Totally true. And I think this is really, compound interest is something hard to grasp for the human mind. And you have to visualize it in order to understand how powerful it can be. If you just, I remember there was one example from a Chinese teacher at Tsinghua who told us a story about if you took a board of chess and you put 2 rice corns on the first top left corner, and then you double it on each little box, you can actually calculate on your calculator this enormous amount of rice corns that you're going to have if you literally double 64 times. It's inconceivable to the human mind, and you need to visualize it and calculate it in order to believe it.
Since you're already very active on social media, so besides MyWallchart.com, where else can the audience find you, follow you if they want to, follow your travels?
So if there's any Chinese listeners or people who've lived in China and downloaded Douyin, so the Chinese version of TikTok, then you can find me under my Chinese name, which is Shengyan, Ma Shengyan. So please follow me there. You can check out all my travel stories on it. Then I'm also on Instagram under marcoluca.park.
Marco Luca, can you spell it for the audience?
Yeah, it's MarcoLuca.PARK. And then I'm also, yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And then I'm on LinkedIn with my real name, so to say, which is Marco Matti. So feel free to reach out.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marco, coming here today. And I'm very looking forward to the new developments of MyWallchart. I will check it out myself, and hopefully the audience will check it out too.
Great. I was very happy to be here. It was great. It was a lot of fun. And let me know what you think. Let me know if you have, if you identify any rooms of improvements. And we're very happy to adjust and keep building MyWallchart and your financial tool.
Okay, so hopefully the audience will not flood your inbox.
We'll prioritize and identify clusters of feedback and work on it. That's when you say you're open to feedback, you should also be able to take it and to work on it. So we're happy to do this.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
That's it. Thanks so much. Bye.
If you like today's content, make sure to subscribe, like, and share. See you in the next episode.